They say divorce ends a story, but for me it was only the painful beginning. I lost my marriage, my home, and my sense of worth. Every night, I lay awake asking if love was over for me forever. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. What if I told you that after all the heartbreak, betrayal, and loneliness, I discovered a second chance at love that changed everything? When I look back at my life, I see it in two parts: before the divorce and after it. The man I was before seems like a stranger now. He was full of hope, full of dreams about marriage, about love, about family. He believed that once you said, "I do," the world would take care of the rest. But the man who survived the storm of divorce knows better. He carries scars no one can see, scars that remind him that love, trust, and marriage are fragile things. I still remember the day the papers were signed. Sitting in that cold office, my ex-wife across the table, both of us too tired to argue anymore. There were no tears left, no anger, just silence. A silence so heavy it almost crushed me. In that moment, it felt like I had failed at everything. Failed as a husband, failed as a partner, failed as a man. Life after divorce is not what people imagine. Outsiders think it means freedom, a new beginning, maybe even excitement. But for me, it felt like walking through ruins. Everywhere I turned, I saw reminders of what I had lost. The wedding pictures tucked away in a box. The coffee mugs we once bought as a couple. The apartment that echoed with emptiness after she left. Even small things like the sound of laughter on the street or seeing a couple holding hands felt like knives digging into my chest. Friends tried to comfort me. They told me, "You'll move on. You'll find someone else." But their words rang hollow. Because in the nights when I lay awake staring at the ceiling, the silence screamed louder than their encouragement. Loneliness is not just about being alone. It's about feeling invisible in a world that keeps moving without you. Work became my escape. I buried myself in long hours, endless tasks, anything to avoid facing the reality waiting for me at home. The office lights became my companion, the glowing screen my closest friend. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the truth always returned the moment I turned the key to my door. The truth was that I was broken. Family gatherings were the hardest. Relatives asking questions with fake sympathy in their voices, neighbors whispering behind my back, friends' wives looking at me with pity. Divorce was not just my failure. It became a stain that others could see. It felt like wearing a scarlet letter, one that shouted to the world, this man couldn't keep his marriage. The pain wasn't only emotional, it was practical too. Half of my savings gone. Bills stacked higher. A smaller apartment in a less lively neighborhood. Life shrank after the divorce. Dreams of traveling with my wife, buying a house, starting a family, vanished overnight. And yet, what hurt the most wasn't the money or the lifestyle. It was the emptiness in my heart. The lack of someone to share my day with. Someone to laugh with, someone to argue with, someone to sit in silence with. Even the fights we had, I missed them. Because they meant there was still something between us. After she left, there was nothing. I told myself I would never love again. That love was a lie, a dangerous illusion. I promised myself I would build walls so high, no one could climb them. Better to be safe in loneliness than risk being shattered again. I thought I was protecting myself, but in reality, I was just sinking deeper into isolation. Then, something unexpected began to happen. It started small. Smiles from strangers, kind words from coworkers, moments of connection I hadn't noticed before. The world hadn't abandoned me, even if I felt like it had. Slowly, I realized that my story didn't have to end with divorce. It was only a chapter, not the whole book. But here's the thing. When your heart has been broken once, the idea of trusting again feels impossible. Every gesture feels suspicious. Every kind word feels like a trap. My fear of repeating the same mistakes was stronger than my desire to open up. I told myself it was better to stay guarded, to live alone, to accept that love was no longer for me. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, "What if you're wrong?" That whisper haunted me, challenged me, and eventually pushed me to look at life differently. But before that second chance at love would come into my life, I had to face the darkest corners of my past, the insecurities, the regrets, and the questions I tried so hard to bury. I didn't know it then, but my story was about to change. My heart, though scarred, still had room to beat for someone new. And love. Love was waiting for me in the most unexpected place. Time has a strange way of softening pain. At first, it feels endless, like a storm that will never pass. But slowly, day by day, something shifts. You wake up and realize the tears don't come as quickly as before. The silence doesn't cut as deeply. The loneliness is still there, but it no longer suffocates you. That's how it happened for me. After months of dragging myself through each day, I started noticing small things again. The smell of fresh coffee in the morning. The way the sun painted golden stripes across my small apartment wall. The laughter of children playing outside. For so long, I had ignored these simple joys because I was trapped inside my grief. Now, for the first time, I began to feel their warmth. It didn't mean I was healed. Far from it. But I was learning how to live again. And in those fragile moments of rediscovery, life began to open little doors. One of those doors was a bookshop near my office. I used to pass it every day without looking. But one evening, after a particularly draining day at work, something drew me inside. The soft glow of the lamps, the quiet rustle of pages, the scent of old paper. It felt like stepping into another world. A world where time slowed down, and pain didn't exist. I found myself going there often. At first, I told myself it was just to browse, just to escape. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. It became a safe space. A place where I wasn't the divorced man. Just another soul searching for comfort in stories. And it was there, in that bookshop, that I first saw her. She was standing by the travel section, flipping through a guidebook. Something about her presence caught me off guard. Maybe it was the way her eyes sparkled with curiosity, or the way she smiled at the pages as if she were already on an adventure. She looked alive. Not in the noisy, careless way most people seemed, but in a quiet, genuine way that felt rare. I didn't speak to her that day. I simply watched from a distance, not out of rudeness but out of fear. My heart wasn't ready. Even the thought of starting a conversation felt dangerous. So I left the shop without a word. But her image stayed with me. The next time I visited, she was there again. This time by the poetry section. Her hands gently traced the spines of books as though each one carried a secret worth discovering. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, polite smile. It was nothing really. Just a fleeting moment. But for me it was everything. After years of looking away, of avoiding people, I found myself holding someone's gaze. And it didn't hurt. Her presence became a quiet rhythm in my visits. Sometimes she was there, sometimes she wasn't. I never knew her name, never spoke more than a polite nod. Yet somehow the possibility of seeing her made me look forward to each trip. It was a fragile hope, a reminder that life still had surprises hidden in its corners. But outside the bookshop, my struggles continued. Nights were still heavy, haunted by memories of my failed marriage. Doubts whispered constantly. What if I'm not enough? What if I fail again? What if no one could ever love me after all this? These thoughts were my shadows, always following, always reminding me of my wounds. To fight them, I started small. I joined a gym not to build muscles, but to rebuild discipline. The first days were painful. My body resisted, my mind resisted even more. But slowly the routine gave me strength. I wasn't just lifting weights, I was lifting pieces of myself back into place. I also reconnected with old friends, people I had pushed away during my darkest days. Sitting with them, sharing laughter, listening to their stories. It reminded me that life wasn't only about loss. There were still bonds worth holding on to, still moments worth living. Yet, every time I felt a flicker of joy, guilt followed. As if being happy again meant I was betraying the pain I had carried. As if healing meant I was erasing the memories of my marriage. But over time, I began to understand something important. Moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to keep living, even with the scars. The bookshop woman. Yes, that's how I thought of her. Continued to appear in my story like a gentle melody. Sometimes we'd cross paths at the counter. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh softly at a passage she read. And though I never dared to approach her, her presence reminded me of something I thought I had lost forever. Hope. Hope that not all connections end in heartbreak. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the heart can beat again after being broken. And that hope grew quietly inside me, preparing me for something I couldn't yet imagine. Because life has a way of bringing people together when the time is right. And my time was coming, though I didn't know it yet. The evening that changed everything was ordinary at first. I had finished work later than usual and felt drained, the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones. My first instinct was to go straight home, collapse on the couch, and disappear into silence. But instead, I found myself walking toward the bookshop again, as though something unseen was guiding my steps. The bell above the door chimed as I entered, and the familiar comfort of warm lights and the smell of paper wrapped around me. I moved slowly through the aisles, not really searching for anything in particular, just letting the shelves lead me. That's when I saw her again. She was standing near the philosophy section, holding a book with a soft smile, her lips moving silently as though she were tasting the words. I froze for a moment, my heart racing faster than it should have for such a simple sight. A part of me whispered, "Just walk away, don't ruin it." But another part, quieter yet stronger, told me that maybe it was time. I gathered all the courage I had left inside me and walked closer. "Is it good?" I asked, my voice careful, almost hesitant. She looked up, surprised at first, then her smile widened. "This one, yes. It makes you think differently about life. Though sometimes it feels heavier than I can handle." I nodded, unsure how to respond. My social skills felt rusty, like an old machine that hadn't been used in years. "But to my relief," she continued, "I've seen you here before," she said softly. "You always go to the classics section." Her words startled me, not because of what she said, but because it meant she had noticed me too. I wasn't invisible. I suppose I like stories that last," I managed to reply. "Books that remind you that even in the hardest times, people find a way to keep going." She tilted her head thoughtfully, then extended her hand. "I'm Hannah." Her name felt warm in my ears, simple yet graceful. I shook her hand gently and told her mine. For the first time in years, introducing myself didn't feel like a burden. From that moment, a small seed of connection began to grow. We talked for a while that evening. Nothing deep, nothing too personal, just books, favorite authors, and places we both wanted to see someday. But beneath the lightness of our words, I felt something stirring inside me. It wasn't just attraction. It was something far rarer, peace. Over the next few weeks, our encounters became more frequent. Sometimes planned, sometimes accidental. Sometimes we'd bump into each other in the aisles, laughing at the coincidence. Other times we'd end up sitting together at the small cafe corner of the shop, sipping coffee while sharing thoughts about the stories we loved. I discovered that Hannah was a teacher. She spoke about her students with a mix of pride and worry, as though each one was a piece of her heart walking outside her body. She had a way of listening, truly listening, that made you feel heard in a way most people never manage. And slowly, without realizing it, I began to open up. At first, it was small things. My favorite childhood books, my dream of traveling, the struggles of balancing work and life. But little by little, heavier truths slipped out. One evening, as we sat in the quiet corner of the cafe, I admitted, I wasn't always alone. I used to be married. The words tasted bitter in my mouth, heavy with shame. I half expected her to pull back, to let silence build a wall between us. But instead, Hannah's eyes softened. "What happened?" she asked gently. And for the first time I told someone my story. Not all of it, not every painful detail, but enough. Enough for her to understand that I had loved, lost, and broken. That I carried scars no one could see. She didn't judge. She didn't pity. She simply listened. And then she said something that stayed with me. "You know, sometimes broken things have more value. Because they've survived. And because they remind us how fragile and precious life really is." Her words hit me deeper than she could have imagined. In that moment, I realized that she didn't see me as damaged or incomplete. She saw me as human. And that made all the difference. But even as our bond grew, fear lingered inside me. At night, doubts whispered louder than ever. What if I fail again? What if she leaves me too? What if I'm not enough for her? My heart had been burned once, and the scars made me cautious. Still, I couldn't deny the light she brought into my life. The way she made me laugh again, the way she reminded me that kindness still existed in the world, the way she encouraged me to dream. I started noticing changes in myself. My posture was straighter. My laughter came easier. The loneliness that had weighed on me for years didn't feel so heavy anymore. I wasn't fully healed, but I was no longer broken beyond repair. One evening, as we left the bookshop together, Hannah said, "You know, it's strange. I used to come here just to escape my own loneliness. But lately, it feels different. It feels like I come here to see someone." Her eyes met mine, and I knew exactly what she meant. I wanted to tell her everything then. That she had brought me back to life. That her presence was like sunlight after a long storm. That she was teaching me how to love again. But fear held my tongue. Because with hope comes risk. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for the risk of losing her. Little did I know, life was about to test that fear in ways I couldn't yet imagine. The comfort of our bookshop meetings, the warmth of her smile. It was only the beginning. The real story, the real challenge of love after heartbreak, was still waiting ahead. Falling in love after heartbreak is never a smooth road. At first, I thought meeting Hannah was like stepping into a gentle sunrise after years of night. But soon I realized that with every ray of light also came shadows. Shadows of doubt, fear, and memories I thought I had buried. The more I cared for her, the more the past haunted me. At night, when I lay in bed, images of my ex-wife returned uninvited. Her laughter, once sweet, now burned like salt in an open wound. I remembered the coldness in her voice the day she told me she wanted out. The betrayal, the emptiness, the way I had begged her to reconsider, only to watch her walk away. Every time Hannah smiled at me, a part of me whispered, "What if she leaves too? What if history repeats itself?" I wanted to trust her. She had given me no reason not to. But scars don't ask for permission before bleeding again. One evening, after we had shared a quiet dinner at a small cafe, she walked me back toward the bus stop. The air was cool, the streets half empty, and she looked beautiful under the soft glow of the streetlights. My heart wanted to say, "I think I'm falling for you." But my fear forced me into silence. Instead, I found myself asking strange, heavy questions. "Do you believe people can change?" I asked suddenly, my voice more serious than I intended. He paused, surprised. "Change? In what way? I mean, if someone has hurt you, broken your trust, can they ever really be different? Or do they just carry the same flaws forever?" Her eyes softened with thought. "I think people can change. But only if they want to. And only if they face what broke them in the first place." Her answer was wise, but it didn't calm me. Because deep inside, I wasn't sure I had faced what broke me. That night, when I got home, I stared at the divorce papers I had kept in a drawer for years. Why hadn't I thrown them away? Why was I still holding on to the remnants of a love that had died? The truth was, I was terrified. Terrified that I wasn't good enough. Terrified that Hannah deserved someone whole, not someone still patching up old wounds. As days turned into weeks, our connection deepened. We laughed more, shared more, and even started planning small things together, like which books to read side by side. Yet every step forward felt dangerous to me. One Sunday afternoon, she invited me to a picnic at the park. It was simple, just a blanket, sandwiches, and a book of poems she wanted to read aloud. Watching her there, laughing with the wind in her hair, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. But joy frightened me, because joy meant I had something to lose again. Later, as she leaned back on the blanket, reading softly, I caught myself staring at her. And then the thought struck me like lightning. What if this ends? What if I'm setting myself up for another fall? I must have gone quiet because she stopped reading and looked at me. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." But inside I was anything but okay. That night, I avoided her texts. Not because I didn't want to talk, but because I was scared of how much I wanted to. The more I pulled away, the more guilt pressed on me. Why was I sabotaging something good? Why couldn't I just let myself be happy? The conflict inside me only grew stronger. At work, I found myself distracted, my thoughts constantly circling around Hannah. At home, silence felt heavier than before. I longed to be with her. Yet when I was, fear whispered in my ear like a poison. One particular evening, she invited me to her apartment for dinner. It was the first time, and I knew it was a step forward. I stood at her door with flowers in my hand, but as soon as she opened it, I felt a pang of panic. Her home was warm and welcoming, filled with little touches of her personality. Paintings, books stacked everywhere, photos of her with friends and family. It reminded me of how my ex-wife once filled our home. Sitting at her table, eating the meal she had cooked, I felt my chest tighten. She was offering me trust, intimacy, closeness. And I was drowning in the memory of how quickly all of this had been taken from me before. Halfway through dinner, she reached across the table, her hand brushing mine. "You seem distant tonight," she said quietly. I looked into her eyes, and for a moment, I wanted to confess everything. I wanted to tell her about my fears, about the nightmares of my past, about how much I wanted to love her but how much it scared me. Instead, I pulled my hand back and said, "I'm just stressed from work." Her smile faltered, but she didn't push. She simply nodded. But the disappointment in her eyes haunted me long after I left her apartment. I knew then that my silence was becoming a wall that could destroy the very thing I was desperate to protect. In the days that followed, I wrestled with my emotions. Part of me wanted to run, to save myself from the risk of heartbreak by ending things before they got too deep. Another part of me wanted to fight, to believe that love could heal me. The conflict was tearing me apart. And though Hannah couldn't yet see the storm inside me, she would soon. Because no wall stays hidden forever. And the cracks in mine were already beginning to show. The following weeks felt like a tug of war between my heart and my fears. On one hand, I couldn't deny the happiness Hannah brought into my life. On the other, my mind was constantly feeding me images of abandonment, betrayal, and endings I wasn't ready to face again. The cracks began small, barely noticeable at first. I started canceling plans. Once, I told her I had to stay late at work, though the truth was I just sat alone at home staring at old photographs I should have thrown away years ago. Another time, I claimed I wasn't feeling well, but in reality, I was afraid of how much I wanted to see her. Each excuse cut deeper into me than it did into her. But Hannah was patient, at least in the beginning. She would send messages. "It's okay, we can meet another time." Or, "Take care of yourself, don't overwork." Her kindness made me feel both grateful and guilty. One evening, after ignoring her call for hours, I finally picked up. Her voice was calm, but there was a weight to it. "Are you avoiding me?" she asked. The directness of her question caught me off guard. "No," I lied, my throat dry. "I've just been busy." There was silence on the other end. Then she said softly, "Sometimes it feels like you're here, but not really with me." Her words pierced me. 'Cause she was right. I wanted to explain, to tell her about the nights filled with memories of betrayal, the scars that made me doubt love itself. But fear clamped my mouth shut. Instead, I whispered, "I'm sorry." She didn't press further. She just sighed. "I don't need perfect, you know. I just need honest." That night, guilt became my new companion. Days turned into weeks, and the strain grew heavier. Hannah still reached out, but there was a new hesitancy in her voice, as though she was unsure of her place in my life. I hated myself for making her feel that way, yet I couldn't seem to break free of the prison in my own mind. The breaking point came one Saturday evening. She had invited me to join her and a few of her friends for dinner. It was the first time she wanted to introduce me to people in her circle, a sign that what we shared was becoming something real. I agreed at first, but as the day approached, panic took over. Questions swirled in my head like a storm. What if they don't like me? What if they ask about my past? What if she realizes I'm not good enough? An hour before the dinner, I called her. "I can't come," I said, my voice trembling. There was a long silence. "Why not?" she finally asked. I can't," I muttered, unable to give her the truth. "Haven't you cancelled enough already?" Her voice cracked, but it wasn't anger, it was hurt. Had no answer. "Do you even want this?" she asked after a pause. Her words sliced through me. Course I wanted it. I wanted her. But fear had stolen my ability to say so. Instead, I remained silent. Her quiet sob on the other end was the last thing I heard before she hung up. I sat there in my apartment, staring at my phone, hating myself. For years, loneliness had been my only companion. Now that someone was finally reaching out to me, I was pushing her away. The days that followed were heavy. Hannah didn't message as much, and when she did, her words were shorter, colder. I had built the wall so high she was no longer sure if she could reach me. One evening, desperate to escape my thoughts, I went to the bookshop where we had first spoken. I half hoped she would be there. She wasn't. Walking through the aisles, I realized how empty the shop felt without her presence. That was when it hit me. I was losing her. Not because she wanted to leave, but because I was too afraid to let her stay. Memories flooded me. Her laughter at the picnic, her hand brushing mine across the table, her voice reading poetry beneath the trees. Every moment was a reminder of the love I was destroying with my silence. That night, I stared at myself in the mirror and asked a question I had avoided for years. Am I going to let the past decide my future? But the answer didn't come easily. The conflict inside me deepened further when I saw her days later at the cafe near her apartment. She was with a friend, smiling faintly, but when her eyes met mine, there was distance. A distance I had created. I wanted to walk up to her to explain everything, but my feet felt nailed to the ground. By the time I found the courage, she had already left. Back home, the silence was unbearable. For the first time in years, I cried. Not because of my ex-wife, but because of Hannah. Because I knew I was on the verge of losing the best thing that had happened to me in a long time. And still, fear kept me paralyzed. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I had two choices. Either I confronted my past, confessed my fears, and risked everything by being vulnerable with her, or I kept hiding and lost her forever. The decision was tearing me apart. I didn't know which path I would choose. But deep down, I knew the time to decide was coming soon. Because Hannah's patience, though strong, was not infinite. And if I didn't act, my second chance at love would slip through my fingers, just like the first one had. The days after our last argument, or perhaps it was more of a silent war, were unbearable. I avoided the bookshop, I avoided her texts, I avoided myself in the mirror. Every reflection reminded me of the cowardice I had displayed. Hannah didn't reach out immediately, and the silence was deafening. I tried to convince myself that she would understand, that love could forgive fear. But deep down, I knew I had let my past dictate the present. And my past was ruthless. Then came the phone call I had been dreading. Her voice, calm yet trembling, came through my speaker. "We need to talk." I could feel the weight of every unsaid word pressing down on me. "Okay," I whispered, my throat dry. We agreed to meet at a quiet park near the bookshop, the same place where we had shared our first picnic. The irony wasn't lost on me. It should have been a happy place, yet my heart pounded with dread. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting on the blanket, her posture stiff, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked distant. A part of her heart seemed to have pulled away, leaving only a shadow of the warmth I had grown to love. "I've been patient," she began. Her voice was steady but firm. "But patience has limits." I swallowed hard, unable to meet her gaze. My chest ached as I thought of all the moments I had ruined. All the opportunities to be honest, to trust, to open up, wasted. "I know I've hurt you," I admitted finally, my voice breaking. "I never meant to. I'm just scared." She sighed, looking away at the trees swaying in the wind. "Scared of what?" "Scared of failing again," I confessed. "Scared of losing someone I care about. Scared of being broken again like I was before. I didn't want to drag you into my mess." Her eyes softened slightly, but her lips pressed into a thin line. "Do you realize what you've done? By avoiding me, by hiding behind excuses, you've built a wall between us. I've waited, I've hoped. But I can't love someone who won't let me in." Her words hit me like a storm. Every lie I had told, every excuse I had made, every moment I had let fear control me, they all led to this. "I want to let you in," I said desperately. "I want to trust. I want to love. But I've been afraid, and I know that's not fair to you." Hannah's gaze held mine, searching for something deeper, something real. Then she asked the question that pierced through all my defenses. "Can you be honest with me? Not just now, but always." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past years pressing on my shoulders. For a moment, I wanted to retreat, to run, to hide in the safety of solitude. But looking at her, the way her eyes reflected care, patience, and something like hope, I realized I couldn't. "Yes," I said, my voice firm despite the tears. "I promise. No more hiding. No more walls. You deserve my honesty, and I want to give it to you." A silence fell between us. Then she reached out, her hand trembling slightly as she touched mine. "I need to know," she whispered, "that I can trust you to face the hard parts with me. Life isn't easy, love isn't easy. But if we're together, we face it together." I squeezed her hand, feeling a weight lift off my chest. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of clarity. I realized that love wasn't about never being hurt. It was about being brave enough to face pain with someone else, to let them see your scars and still stay. We spent hours talking that day. Not about books, not about poetry, not about trivial things, but about fear, trust, and the ghosts of the past. I told her about my divorce, about the nights I cried alone, about the walls I had built to protect myself. I told her everything I had never admitted to anyone. And Hannah listened. Not with judgment, not with pity, but with understanding. She asked questions, probed gently, and offered comfort when I stumbled. By the time the sun began to set, painting the park in golden light, a new bond had formed. A bond forged not just in shared joy, but in vulnerability, in facing fear, in being honest about the messiness of life. I realized then that conflict isn't just about arguments or disagreements. Sometimes conflict lives inside us, in the walls we build, in the doubts we harbor, in the fears we refuse to confront. And the only way through is courage. That evening, as we walked back toward the city streets, hand in hand, I felt a mixture of relief and hope. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments of fear. But we had faced the first, hardest one together, our own inner conflict. For the first time since my divorce, I believed in the possibility of love again. Not a perfect love, not an easy love, but a real love, capable of growing stronger because we had faced the darkness together. And that realization, as fragile and tentative as it was, changed everything. Because I had finally learned that second chances aren't just given, they are earned, fought for, and nurtured with courage. The morning after our long, emotional conversation in the park, I woke with a strange mixture of calm and nervous anticipation. The storm inside me had quieted, but a new challenge waited. Could I translate honesty into action? Could I prove to Hannah that my words weren't empty? I spent hours pacing my small apartment, rehearsing what I would say, how I would act, how I could show her that I had changed. Every sentence I practiced in front of the mirror felt both too simple and too heavy. One wrong word, one hesitant glance, and all the progress we had made could crumble. Finally, I decided that the best way to prove myself wasn't in grand gestures, but in genuine courage. I would show up at her apartment, not with flowers or gifts, but with truth and presence. As I walked toward her door, my heart raced. I stopped briefly, inhaling deeply, and whispered to myself, "This is it. No running, no hiding, just honesty." She opened the door almost immediately, as though she had sensed I would come. Her expression was cautious, a delicate mix of hope and wariness. "I'm here," I said simply, meeting her gaze. "Come in," she replied, stepping aside. Inside, the apartment felt alive yet intimate, a reflection of her personality. I could see little touches she had added since I last visited. A new painting on the wall, a small vase of fresh flowers, the scent of cinnamon lingering in the air. Everything spoke of her life continuing, moving forward. And yet she had made space for me within it. We sat on the couch, facing each other. The weight of the moment pressed on me. I wanted to speak, to confess everything, but the fear of imperfection lingered. Then I remembered the lessons from our park conversation. Honesty, courage, vulnerability. "I've been running from fear for too long," I began, my voice trembling. "Fear of losing, fear of failing, fear of being hurt again. But I can't keep doing that. Not with you." She watched me, her eyes wide, attentive, not interrupting. "I care about you more than I can say," I continued. "And I want to try, truly try, to be someone worthy of your trust. I know I've made mistakes. I know I've been distant and scared. But I don't want to hide anymore. I don't want to let fear decide my happiness." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then softly she said, "Do you mean it?" "I do," I said, my voice gaining strength. "Every word. I want to face life with you. I want to love even if it's messy, even if it's scary. Because I know that whatever happens, it will be worth it with you by my side." Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. She reached out and took my hand, holding it tightly. "I've waited for someone brave enough to face themselves," she whispered. "And maybe that person is you." In that instant, the tension I had carried for months, the fear, the guilt, the doubt, began to dissolve. It didn't vanish completely. Scars never fully disappear. But for the first time, they no longer controlled me. We spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing dreams. Not just for the future, but for the present. Every hesitation I had, every fear I had let dominate my heart, melted in the warmth of honesty and acceptance. Later that evening, we decided to take a walk along the river. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. It felt symbolic, as though the world itself acknowledged our turning point. "I never thought I'd trust anyone again," I admitted quietly. She squeezed my hand. "And yet here we are. Trust isn't given, it's earned. And you've earned it step by step." The words struck me deeply. Earn trust. That was the essence of love after heartbreak. It wasn't easy. It wasn't instant. But it was real. And I wanted to nurture it every day. As we walked, I realized something profound. Life had given me a second chance, not as a reward but as a test. A test to see if I could rise above fear, if I could embrace vulnerability, if I could love without letting the past dictate the present. When we returned to her apartment, she invited me to stay for dinner. It was a simple meal, but it felt monumental. Sharing food, sharing stories, sharing laughter. It was a ritual of intimacy that I had feared I would never experience again. And then, quietly, she said something that made my heart stop. "I'm glad you didn't give up on us." Her words, so simple, carried the weight of months of struggle, fear, and longing. I realized then that the climax of our story wasn't a dramatic confrontation or an epic gesture. It was the moment when honesty, courage, and vulnerability collided, and we chose to move forward together. That night, as I walked home, I felt a shift inside me. The fear that had haunted me since my divorce, the fear that I was unworthy, broken, too damaged, was still there, but it no longer ruled me. I had faced it, confronted it, and chosen love anyway. And in that choice I found freedom. Because love isn't about perfection. It's about resilience, courage, and the willingness to show up, even when the outcome is uncertain. As I lay in bed that night, I realized something else. The story of my life hadn't ended with divorce. That chapter had closed, yes, but a new chapter, one filled with hope, connection, and second chances, had begun. And I knew, with a quiet certainty, that I wasn't just living. I was alive. The days following our breakthrough felt lighter, yet reality had its own tests in store. Life has a way of reminding you that happiness isn't permanent, that love must constantly be chosen, even after heartbreak. One afternoon, as I walked to the bookshop to meet Hannah, I received a call that shook me to the core. It was my ex-wife. "Can we meet?" she asked. Her voice was calm, almost casual. My heart pounded. Memories of betrayal, pain, and the long nights of loneliness rushed back, threatening to undo the progress I had made. But I knew I had to respond carefully. I couldn't let fear control me again. "Why now?" I asked cautiously. "I need to talk," she said. "There are things you should know, for closure maybe." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up, run back into the comfort of avoidance. But another part, the part that had learned courage, pushed me forward. "Fine," I said, my voice steady. "We can meet." I knew Hannah would notice the tension. And when I met her at the bookshop later, she did. "Everything okay?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath. "It's complicated. My ex wants to meet. I need to go." Her expression tightened just slightly. A flicker of fear crossed her face. I knew she worried about the past catching up with us. "I trust you," she said softly. "Just promise me you'll be careful." Her words reminded me why I couldn't run anymore. Love wasn't about hiding. It was about facing life together, even when it was messy. The meeting with my ex was tense. She tried to discuss our shared past, the legal matters we had left unresolved, and even subtle accusations. But I stayed grounded, repeating to myself, "This is the past. This is not Hannah. This is not my life anymore." By the time the meeting ended, I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The past had tried to pull me back, but I had resisted. I had chosen the present, and I had chosen Hannah. When I returned to her, she hugged me without a word. And in that silence, we both understood something. Love isn't just about joy. It's about surviving storms together. But tests didn't end there. A few days later, a misunderstanding arose at the bookshop. A friend of Hannah's, unaware of our growing closeness, commented lightly on our frequent meetings, implying there might be something serious happening. Hannah overheard, and though the comment was harmless, she misinterpreted it as me hiding truths about my past again. Her expression that evening was distant, guarded. "I don't know if I can trust you yet," she said quietly. My chest tightened. Every instinct screamed to retreat, to hide behind excuses. But this time I refused. "I promise you, Hannah," I said, holding her hands firmly. "I'm not hiding anything. I'm here with you honestly and fully. Nothing from the past can change what I feel now." Tears welled up in her eyes. "It's just, I've seen how you shut down before. I don't want to lose you like that again." "I know," I whispered. "And I won't. Not this time." Then came the moment that truly tested us. Hannah received news that her sister was moving abroad suddenly. She had to make decisions about family responsibilities, work, and personal sacrifices. All at once. It was overwhelming, and she turned to me for support. I realized then that love wasn't just about romance. It was about showing up in practical ways, standing beside someone when life became heavy, and choosing commitment even in difficult moments. We spent the night planning, talking through options, brainstorming solutions. I offered to help wherever I could, to be her anchor in uncertainty. And as we worked together, the bond between us deepened. By morning, the tension had transformed into a quiet strength. We had faced uncertainty together and survived. And then, as we walked through the city streets hand in hand, I finally felt it. Something I hadn't felt since before my divorce. Confidence in love. Not arrogance, not naivety, but a quiet certainty that comes from knowing you've faced fear and chosen connection anyway. "I've never felt this before," Hannah said, looking up at me. "I was scared of losing myself in love again. But with you, it feels right. Even when it's hard, it feels right." Her words were like sunlight breaking through clouds. I squeezed her hand, feeling gratitude and relief wash over me. "Nothing will make me run again," I promised. "I've learned my lesson. I've faced my past, my fears, and I've chosen us. Every single day, I'll choose us." She smiled, her eyes glistening. "Then let's face life together, no matter what comes." That night, as we walked along the river, the city lights reflected on the water, shimmering like tiny sparks of hope. I realized that the climax of our journey wasn't just about fear, challenges, or confrontation. It was about choosing love over fear, courage over avoidance, and trust over past pain. We had faced storms, emotional, practical, and unexpected, and we had survived. Not perfectly but authentically, not easily but together. And in that realization, the tension that had haunted me for months finally lifted. Because love after heartbreak isn't about finding perfection. It's about finding someone willing to stand beside you through all the uncertainty, the fear, and the chaos of life. Hannah and I had reached the turning point. And the final step, the ultimate confirmation of our second chance, was still ahead. The days following the challenges with Hannah were a whirlwind, yet also a revelation. Each test, the ex-wife, the misunderstandings, the family emergencies, had forced me to confront the walls I had built around myself. And now, standing on the edge of what could either break us or solidify our bond, I felt a surge of clarity. It was a quiet evening, the city lights glimmering like distant stars, when I realized that nothing left unsaid could remain between us. I needed to show Hannah, not just tell her, that I had truly changed, that I was no longer a man running from fear, but a man willing to face love fully. I called her and asked if she wanted to take a walk along the riverside, the same place that had seen our first confrontation and our first honest conversation. She agreed, and I could feel the anticipation in her voice, tinged with hope and caution. When I saw her waiting, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the lamplight, my chest tightened. The moment demanded honesty, courage, and presence, and I intended to give her all three. "Hannah," I began, my voice firm yet gentle, "I've spent months running from fear, letting the past dictate my future. But I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to hide. Not from you, not from us." She listened quietly, her hands clasped in front of her, her gaze steady. "I know love isn't easy," I continued. "It requires trust, patience, and courage. And I promise you from this moment on, I will face every challenge with you. I will be honest, I will be present, and I will love you fully, even when it's scary." Her eyes glistened as she stepped closer, reaching out to hold my hands. "I've waited for someone brave enough to face themselves, to face life with me. And I see that courage in you now." The air felt charged with emotion, a mixture of relief, hope, and the raw intensity of two hearts reconnecting in trust. We walked along the riverside in silence, letting the gentle rhythm of the water soothe the tension. For the first time, the past didn't feel like a shadow looming over us. Instead, it felt like a lesson that had prepared us to embrace the present fully. As the night deepened, I reached a moment of boldness. I stopped walking and turned to her, looking into her eyes with unwavering focus. "Hannah," I said, my voice low but sincere, "I don't want a second chance to be just words. I want to build something real with you. Something that can survive fear, doubts, and life's challenges. I want to be the man you deserve, not someone hiding behind past scars." She smiled, tears brimming in her eyes. "You already are that man," she whispered, "because you chose to face everything instead of running away. You chose us." In that moment, a surge of relief and joy washed over me. I realized that the climax of our journey wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a grand gesture. It was this: The conscious choice to face fear, to embrace vulnerability, and to trust love despite the risks. We sat on a bench by the river, our hands intertwined, talking about dreams, fears, and the life we wanted to build together. The conversation flowed naturally, free from hesitation, judgment, or doubt. It was the first time in years that I felt completely seen, completely accepted, and completely alive. At one point, Hannah leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I've never felt safer with anyone before, not even in my own family. With you, I feel understood, valued, and loved for who I am." Her words hit me deeply. They were more than a compliment. They were a confirmation that love, when nurtured with honesty and courage, could heal wounds that had once seemed permanent. I realized then that our journey had prepared us for this moment. The conflict, the fear, the doubts, all had led to the ultimate test, whether we could trust ourselves and each other enough to fully embrace love. And we had passed. Later that night, we returned to her apartment, and for the first time, I felt the full weight of peace in our relationship. No walls, no hiding, no fear. Just presence, trust, and commitment. We talked for hours, sometimes laughing, sometimes in silence, just enjoying the simple comfort of being together. I shared memories of my divorce, the pain I had endured, and the lessons I had learned. And she shared her own fears, her hopes, and her unwavering belief in the possibility of love. By the time morning approached, I felt a profound sense of closure, not just for the past, but for the uncertainty that had plagued me since my divorce. The climax of our story wasn't a single dramatic event. It was the culmination of every choice, every act of honesty, and every moment of courage that had brought us together. Before leaving her apartment, I held her hands and said, "No matter what life throws at us, I will choose you. Every single day." She smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I will choose you. Always." That night, I walked home with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. The fear that had haunted me for so long, the fear of failure, of loss, of heartbreak, was still there, but it no longer ruled me. I had faced it, embraced it, and chosen love anyway. Because love, I realized, is not about perfection. It's about resilience, trust, courage, and the willingness to stand beside someone, even when the path is uncertain. And in that choice I found freedom. Not the fleeting freedom of temporary joy, but the enduring freedom of knowing that I could love fully, honestly, and courageously. As I looked at the city skyline, lights twinkling like tiny beacons of hope, I knew that the climax of our story had arrived. Not in fireworks or dramatic confrontations, but in the quiet, profound moment of mutual trust and commitment. We had survived fear, misunderstandings, and the ghosts of the past. We had faced life's challenges together. And through it all, we had chosen each other. And that choice, simple yet monumental, was the true victory of our love. The weeks that followed our climactic reconciliation with Hannah were unlike anything I had experienced in years. For the first time since my divorce, I felt a sense of balance in life. Not perfect, but real, grounded, and alive. The lessons I had learned during the conflict and climax carried forward, shaping my decisions, actions, and mindset. Every morning, waking up felt different. I no longer feared the day ahead. Instead, I anticipated moments with Hannah, conversations, shared laughter, and even the small challenges that came our way. We were learning to navigate life together, discovering the beauty of partnership in the mundane and the extraordinary alike. Hannah and I established routines that strengthened our bond. Simple rituals like morning coffee on the balcony, walks along the riverside, or cooking dinner together became symbols of trust and stability. These were not grand gestures, but they were meaningful. Every small act of presence reinforced the foundation of honesty and commitment we had built in the climax of our journey. The ex-wife, once a source of tension, faded into the background of my life. I had confronted her, faced the past, and emerged unbroken. More importantly, I had learned that my happiness could not be dictated by those who no longer belonged in my life. I had reclaimed my autonomy, and in doing so, strengthened my connection with Hannah. One evening, while we were sitting together on the couch, I reflected on how far I had come. The fear, the self-doubt, and the lingering memories of past heartbreak no longer held sway over me. They were part of my story, yes, but they no longer defined my capacity to love or to be loved. "Hannah," I said, turning to her with a soft smile, "I never imagined I could feel this peaceful again. I used to think life after divorce would always be filled with loneliness, regrets, and mistakes. But you've shown me that love can be second chances, and that growth is possible even after the deepest pain." She reached out and held my hand. "I believe in you, in us. And I've seen how much you've grown. That's why I trust this love, because it's real, because it's earned, because it's chosen every day." Her words resonated deeply. They reminded me that the resolution of life's struggles isn't always dramatic. Often, it's found in quiet moments of connection, understanding, and shared vulnerability. Our love had matured. It was no longer tentative or fragile. It had been tested, stretched, and fortified. Work, too, became a source of stability rather than stress. I approached my responsibilities with renewed energy and focus, drawing strength from the emotional growth I had experienced. The confidence I had gained in my personal life spilled over into my professional life, allowing me to handle challenges with a calm, grounded approach. Yet life continued to test us, as it inevitably does. There were disagreements, moments of fatigue, and times when old fears resurfaced. But the difference now was that we faced them together. Rather than letting fear dictate our reactions, we communicated openly, addressing concerns with empathy and patience. Each small resolution strengthened our relationship, reinforcing the lessons learned during conflict and climax. Family and friends began to notice the change in me. Where once I had been reserved, cautious, and guarded, I was now open, confident, and engaged. People commented on the joy in my eyes, the ease of my laughter, and the calm determination in my demeanor. I realized that healing and love are not private victories. They radiate outward, affecting everyone around you. One Sunday afternoon, Hannah and I decided to host a small gathering at her apartment. Friends from her circle and a few of my colleagues came together. I observed the interactions, the laughter, and the warmth filling the room. In those moments I felt gratitude, not just for Hannah but for the journey that had led me here. Every heartbreak, every fear, every moment of hesitation had brought me to this point of authentic connection. Later, as the evening wound down, Hannah and I stepped onto the balcony to watch the city lights. The quiet hum of the streets below mirrored the calm that had settled within me. I realized that resolution isn't about erasing past pain. It's about integrating it into your life, learning from it, and allowing it to inform the choices you make in the present. "Hannah," I said softly, "I feel like I can finally breathe. Like I can live fully without being haunted by fear or regret. Thank you for showing me that love can be a second chance, not just for relationships, but for life itself." She leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder. "We've built something stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. And we'll continue building it, every day, together." The sense of peace was profound. I had faced my past, confronted my fears, and embraced love fully. The scars of my divorce remained, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they served as reminders of resilience, growth, and the capacity to rebuild. In the days that followed, our life together became a tapestry of small victories, shared dreams, and deep emotional intimacy. We celebrated milestones, comforted each other in challenges, and nurtured the connection that had survived fear and uncertainty. I began to reflect on the story I would someday tell, not just to others but to myself. A story of loss, heartbreak, fear, courage, and ultimately redemption through love. It was a reminder that life's hardships are not the end. They are opportunities to grow, to learn, and to embrace the possibility of joy once again. And most importantly, I understood that second chances are not guarantees. They are choices. Every day, Hannah and I chose each other, despite the shadows of the past, despite uncertainty, despite the risks. And in those choices, we found a love that was authentic, resilient, and profoundly rewarding. As the weeks turned into months, the foundation of our relationship solidified. Trust, once fragile, became unshakable. Love, once tentative, became bold and courageous. And I finally understood that life's greatest victories are often quiet, found in the consistency of care, honesty, and shared growth. Looking back, I realized that my divorce had not been the end. It had been a difficult chapter that prepared me for a richer, deeper love. Hannah's presence in my life was a testament to the fact that life could offer second chances, that love could heal, and that courage could transform fear into connection. And as I lay in bed each night, reflecting on our journey, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. A profound, enduring peace that came not from the absence of struggle, but from having faced it and chosen love anyway. If you've ever faced heartbreak, fear, or second chances, this story is for you. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to overcome fear to embrace love? Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want more emotional, real-life stories that touch the heart and inspire courage. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that can change the way you see life and relationships. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt journeys like this to you.